Hi guys, this is my lovely guest Samantha, and today we're going to be teaching you how to do your own base or root color at home. Normally I would never suggest you color your own hair at home, but under current circumstances we're doing the best that we can, and this is what it's come to. So I will drop off the color at your door, or you will have your own hair color. I would definitely recommend you use some gloves to protect your hands. I'm not going to use these today because I'm not going to waste a perfectly good pair of gloves with coronavirus around. You're definitely going to need a comb, and you're going to need some sectioning clips. This is just going to make the whole process a lot cleaner and a lot easier so you don't make as much of a mess at home. Trust me, I know coloring my own hair at home is a mess. So I would always recommend you start coloring around the front hairline. You can part your hair down the center, or you can leave your hair where you normally part it. It doesn't really matter. At the top of your head, before you get too much into the crown, about right here, I'm going to go ahead and create my first section going to right behind the top of the ear. So this is going to separate your hair from front to back. And you can go ahead and slide a clip in there to keep that out of the way. Same for the other side. Separate the hair front to back to right around the ear area. And go ahead and clip these front sections out of the way. In the back, go ahead and just part straight down the middle if you want. You can also do a horizontal section instead of a vertical section. And when you're coloring your hair, obviously start with the front, do this front section, and work your way down to the back. If you end up running out of color for your roots by the time you get to the very bottom, it's better that you run out of color there than at the very front at the very end. So I prefer to do a vertical section instead of a horizontal section. Same thing, just clip that section out of the way. You can use whatever clips or hair ties you have available, but just so that way your application will end up being a lot cleaner. So whenever you are doing gray coverage for roots, you always want to start around the face. That's where you tend to have more of your grays and where they tend to be more resistant. After I go through and color all of the roots, sometimes if I have leftover color, I'll go back and tap the roots again at the front just to make sure everything is really saturated. Brings us to a good point. When you're doing root color, saturation is the most important thing. If you don't put enough color, it'll end up being really spotty, and you'll definitely see those grays coming through or your natural hair. If you use too much saturation, it can obviously give you the opposite problem. So you want to make sure that the hair is fully coated. So hopefully you can tell that's saturated versus obviously uncolored and unsaturation. So that's kind of the difference that you're looking for when you're coloring. Make sure again not to overlap any previously colored hair, as it will turn darker. So starting with your first section, you're going to load your brush with product. This is just conditioner for color purposes. And when you're looking at the roots, you'll see where your natural is and where the color has started. You don't want to overlap any of that color, because if you put color on top of color, it'll just end up getting darker. So in order to make sure it all stays the same, try to just only color the part that is uncolored at this moment. Try to keep your brush clean. If you get product up in this area, it can make a mess and get on other pieces of the hair, so just try to keep clean as you're going. And keep in mind, in order to process the way that the color should, try to finish the first 2 quadrants in at least 15 minutes and start your processing time from there. So starting with my first section, we're going to have our imaginary root line. I'm going to take my product and just push it onto those roots to where her hair is colored. Flip that section over and go ahead and tap the other side as well. Your sections should be no larger than about a 1/4 inch. That'll just make sure that all of the hairs are getting colored and saturated. And if you use the back of your brush as a sectioning tool, it makes all of this go a lot easier. And make sure at that front hairline, you're really saturating all of those hairs. Make sure you go back to the front hairline and really tap that color in at those roots and make sure everything is saturated. Please try to avoid getting any color on your skin. So when you're wearing gloves, please make sure you wipe that off. And we'll continue through this rest of the quadrant. When you're finished with this first quadrant, make sure you wipe the hairline to make sure that there's no staining or hair color there. And go around the hairline section one more time. Bring that whole section back together. And then to keep it out of the way, go ahead and clip it. And then we'll move on to the other side. Same process. Similar to the other side, start at the roots. Make sure you don't overlap any pieces of hair that have already been colored. Taking only about 1/4 inch section. Make sure that you can tell that each hair is getting colored and has that sort of glossy wetness to it. If you see any dry spots, you definitely need to go back and make sure that they're fully saturated. This side of her color is my favorite. Same thing, when you finish the section, wipe the hairline of any excess color to avoid staining. Make sure you tap that hairline, make sure all of those hairs are saturated and covered. Then go ahead and resection that section. Move on to your back sections and continue that same all the way through. You won't see as many grays down in the back most of the time, so saturation there doesn't have to be as important. So again, make sure you're using enough color at the front so that everything is fully saturated. I would suggest starting your processing timer by the time you finish the crown. Generally, gray coverage is anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes, and normal base colors is about 35 minutes. The reason why you want to start your processing time before you finish all the way through the bottom is you don't want the color to sit too long at the front. And if you think about it, since you started that first section, it's probably been on for about 15 to 20 minutes by the time you get to the back. So in order to make sure that all of your hairs are fully colored and processed, I'd recommend starting the processing time once you finish that crown section. Once you have finished your processing time, please still wear your gloves and shampoo it out in the shower. You might have to wash your hair once or twice to make sure that you're getting all the product out. You'll definitely feel it. And make sure when you're rinsing your color, you're making sure that there's no color in the runoff. Everything should be cleared. That means it's fully rinsed. When you're coloring, when you're shampooing, make sure you're really scrubbing your roots to make sure that all of that color is getting out, and especially underneath in this nape area. And again, the water will tell you if you've been able to rinse all the color out or not.